So, new album coming out soon, really soon. Can you tell us about this new record a little bit? Like how maybe how's this record could be different from the other ones, or what are your expectations concerning that record?
Well, yeah, this is the first record that we've done with a different lineup, and so it's obviously going to be quite different in that regard. And basically, I think that the essence of the band is definitely still there. Meaning, if you took a person that wasn't aware of the band and played select songs from the catalog, including the new, in a random order, and asked them the question, was this all the same band? I think the answer would be yes. Um, so in that regard, I think the essence is still there and maintained of the traditional sound. But I think that the fact that we're working now with uh, different musicians and musicians that are virtuosos and ridiculously talented is I guess the a noticeable difference. You'll hear quite a bit of different musicianship than you might have heard in the past in terms of technicality.
Yeah, that's what I heard when I listened to the record. So besides the really heavy and well produced aspect of the album, we feel like you have more solos like that are more technically maybe played, or even the little intro passage. Oh yeah, I can see you a little bit.
Yeah, sorry, there it is. I was like, I didn't realize I could do it. I'm on my phone. Normally, I would be on a computer.
Yeah,
Hello?
yeah, maybe it
Yeah, I didn't know
slows.
if that maybe it slows it down.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I'll take it back. Hold on.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I was trying to get it to work.
No, no worries. I think I'll switch mine off as well because it lags sometimes.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, normally I would be on a computer, and that has the video capabilities, obviously. But the past few interviews I've done on Skype have been mobile only, so I thought that this would be the same.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I should definitely have warned the promoters. I usually do like video interviews, but no worries. It's really cool to have you anyway.
Cool.
Um, so when you hear like the song which is in the middle of the album, I think it's the fifth song called Transmigration, right?
Yes.
Uh, Man, what do you say, guys, when you say we're gonna do a really heavy album like deathcore? We can say deathcore or groove metal, as some people call the bands of your genre. But and we're gonna do like a transition which is going to be completely different, like it is acoustic, but still in the mood of the whole album. So can you tell me about this transition?
Well, I think that the band, in general, has always come from multiple uh, places and influences musically, and we've always tried to incorporate other types of sounds than just the brutality that you would expect from a metal band. And for example, we're very heavily into electronic music, and which is a main reason we have a keyboard player that's doing a lot of crazy atmospheric sounds or putting in electronic electronic drum sounds and things of that nature. And we're also into sounds of jazz and which comes through in the guitar solos, and also heavily influenced by hip hop, which comes through in the groove and the drums. And then, of course, classic metal and classical music would be responsible for a song like the Transmigration, and also maybe some of the more somber groups um, that we might have grown up listening to or be influenced by now. So I think we're just a hybrid of all sorts of things, and to put a song on the album is just an expression of who we are and the diversity that influences us and what we like to listen to, and we're certainly not afraid to step out of the box and experiment with all different types of sounds.
So you say you have like actually loads of influences from hip hop to classical metal music to jazz. How would you define a band like Chimera? Would you call it groove metal, death metal, jazz metal, or hip hop metal? I don't know.
How about we just call it metal, and if you really need to have a subgenre, it's maybe hybrid metal. We're a good hybrid of all the sounds, and I think that we have a little bit of influence of everything that you mentioned.
Yeah. So um, man, when you look at the history of your group, you had like so many people coming in and out of the group at the beginning, uh, and now you tell me that you did this album with a total new lineup. Can you tell me about this lineup change in the history of Chimera?
Sure. The band started in '98, and within the first couple of years, um, we had, I guess we were trying to find ourselves and find the right musicians that were dedicated to take it serious and move forward in terms of actually being signed to a record label and making it a career. In the early stages, it was definitely difficult to find people that were serious and dedicated. So that's definitely responsible for the early days of lineup changes. And then once we were signed, um, we and started putting out records. We had to suffer a few lineup changes over the years due to perhaps the pressure of actually doing it for real. Got to some of the guys, and then also some life situations stepped in, such as our original guitar player, Jason Hagar, was got in 2001, was the first to have a child and didn't want to tour, didn't want to miss the birth of the child. And then so you fast forward almost a decade, and starting in like 2007 to about 2010, the lineup was pretty stable. Excuse me, 2006 to 2010, the lineup was pretty stable. But then we reached another point where people in their lives wanted to do different things, such as be home with families and start having kids. And some of us, it was just a little bit, too long. Needed a break from each other, and the I, as a musician, still maintain the drive and spirit to continue with the band. And despite some people wanting to leave or start different things with their lives, my focus maintained towards Chimaira, and that's what I decided to do, and decided to continue. I wanted to continue with people that were not only fans of the band and understood the band, and also extremely talented musicians, but most importantly, I wanted to establish a group with friends that I could enjoy being with 24 hours a day on tour. And that's really important, and something I've learned over the years, that if you're going to do this and make it serious and a profession, you have to have all ducks in a row, and everybody on the has to be on the same page, and you want to be with people that are your friends. And unfortunately, Chimaira previous lineup could no longer be on that sort of page, whereas now it is. And for the past, I'd say 19, 20 months now, it's been a solid lineup again.
Yeah. So you mentioned yeah, I guess it's very important to have people you get along with when you're on tour like 24 hours. You mentioned touring. What are the next tour you're gonna do following that new record?
our first tour that we've set up is actually going to start at the end of July, and we're going to tour our home country, the United States, and do which is a massive undertaking that takes quite a bit of time because it's so massive in terms of size. And then what we hope to get overseas sometime in September and support the album over there, and do the UK and France, Germany, all the other countries that we don't get to go to so often, and we'll be excited to be there for sure.
Yeah, we'll be excited to welcome you in France as well. I was wondering, when you come to France, could you play the song called "Implements of Destruction"?
Sure. Yeah, we'll have to learn that one. That's always a fun one to play. We've played it live before, and we've actually done a few tours where we open the show with that song, which is a nice surprise, I think, for the fans who think we're going to come out all aggressive and pissed off, and instead we start the show with a 10-minute instrumental. I think is pretty cool sometimes.
Yeah, it is definitely. Um, I was wondering as well. Like you've been on the show for like 15 years now, and did you notice an evolution among the fans that you had?
What I find to be interesting is that the fans grow with you, quite a few of them. But I also notice that it's a lot of younger fans and newer fans all the time, and I think that kind of makes sense because if you go back in time when you were 15, 16, and first getting into the music that you loved, that music is still some of your favorite to this day. A lot of it, anyway. Some of it you probably think is crap, but for the most part, that's a very impactful time, ages 15 through 19 for people musically, and that's just not a guess. That's like a psychological study that's been done, and you can look at the research that's been kind of proving that people are really impacted at this certain phase of their lives. So if I think back to a fan that might have been 15 that discovered us 10 years ago, they're 25 now and probably not as passionate about going to concert anymore. They're probably getting out of university and starting a career. And so what I notice often is every couple of years, the age starts to keep staying like 15, 16. Maybe it goes up to like 20, and then it's like back down to 15 again. So I find that interesting. While there are some, of course, older fans and fans that stay with you and whatnot throughout the cycle, I just kind of notice that is they just kind of keep maintaining that same age group, and that's cool to always be able to gain new fans and then watch them grow with you.
Yeah. Do you think that with that new record, you're gonna target like older fans because of the technical aspects of this album?
Well, I would hope that some older fans appreciate it, and I think an older fan that hears the technicality will be impressed because me being a fan of older music, I'm impressed. So with the younger audience, though, I think that they're used to some more of the underground bands being very technically proficient. For example, a band that's popular with the youth would be Animals as Leaders, and now I definitely think they're doing some advanced technical stuff far beyond not what our capabilities are, but at least what we're presenting on an album. And so I think that kids are used to that in an underground sense, and that if they're hearing us do something like that, but maybe it's a different style of music, where a lot of the younger bands might not be so focused on songwriting as they are their musicianship and technicality. We're actually bringing songs and songs with choruses and a memorable factor.
Yeah, you spoke about animals as leaders, like they're playing with those crazy eight strings guitars and that amazing technical plays. What gear do you did you use for that album? Do you have like the regular gear that you've been using like for 15 years, or do you use new gear?
Well, yeah, I mean there are some similarities of what we've always done. For example, we use Mesa boogie cabinets, and that's been around for forever. And the drums have been the same types of drums, crush and Sabian cymbals. So things like that are the same. Our guitar players now, one of them, Matt, is still using ESP, which has been a staple with Chimaira for many years, actually our whole career. And then there are also some new elements added though as well, where we're using Emil uses Paul Reed Smith guitars. We've also gone back to using seven strings where we haven't done that since our first two albums. And our keyboard player uh, is using a lot more analog based synths, where in the past the predominant use was all digital and a lot of keyboard, or excuse me, computer effects, where a lot of the samples and keys now are done on authentic keys with a lot of times vintage gear like old Moog synthesizers or um, old Rolands from the 70s.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some new twists added, but at the same time using a lot of the same traditional gear.
Okay, you mentioned a lot the keyboard player, which is really uncommon for a band of your type to have a keyboard player. Could you tell me a little bit about that, and like what place can a keyboard player find in such a band as Chimaira?
Sure. Well, the influence stemmed from being a fan of industrial heavy metal growing up. I was a fan of bands like Ministry or Nine Inch Nails, KMFDM. This is all like in the 90s. And when starting Chimaira, I thought it would be really interesting to play elements of death metal, hardcore, and traditional metal, but also bring in some industrial elements. And so, therefore, it's not really necessary to have a conventional keyboard player that, perhaps you're thinking this is the band Europe in the Final Countdown with that silly keyboard sound. Um, we're not looking for that, so to speak. It's more or
Obviously.
less, yeah, more or less, if you think of like an older Nine Inch Nails album, such as The Downward Spiral or perhaps Ministry, Psalm 69. There's a lot of aggressive and abrasive sounds that enhance the mood of the song and or part. So we bring it from an approach where if there's a heavy riff or a breakdown, well, if we start throwing in some subsonics as well as some rhythmic sounds as well as some very jarring, evil noise, that part just went from heavy to like, whoa. It just became alive somehow.
Yeah. Um, you know that stuff that is called Braveheart. Do you usually tell your fans like during a gig to do that kind of stuff like Braveheart?
Well, it's funny that you asked that because if you really research the history of that move, you'll start it and you'll see that I was one of the first people to bring that into the heavy metal scene. So after this was in 2003, 2002, I was doing this, and then after I started doing it, Randy from Lamb of God started doing it, and then after that, tons of bands started to do it, and now we're at a point where all of these younger bands are doing it. So I don't see any reason to do it anymore. I find it cliche and overused at this point.
Maybe
I
you
was
have.
doing that 10. 10 years ago at festivals with 50, 60,000 people. So it's really not impressive to me anymore.
Okay, so maybe you have to invent a new move, right?
That's correct, and I was thinking of one where perhaps I get the crowd to just hug.
No, yeah. Well, it surely will be something unusual.
All right, everybody, this next part's gonna come on. I want you all to just hug each other for a minute.
Oh, oh,
Just let it
Jesus.
all out.
So the brave hug,
Yes, yes, that's gonna be the new move.
hug of the death.
Exactly, the hug of death. That's the new
Yeah, the
move.
hug of death. Um, yeah, I mean that Braveheart thing. We see that pretty much everywhere. I was in Hellfest this weekend, and you can see loads of people doing those moves.
Right, it's overused now, and I'm telling you, in 2004, there was very few and far between. I'm not going to say that I invented it. I got it. I stole it from Sick of It All, who were doing it in the hardcore scene. But I definitely did never saw anybody doing it in the metal scene.
Yeah. Do you think you'll come to Hellfest next year?
I would love to. It's been a very long time since we've had the opportunity to play
2007,
Hellfest.
right?
Yeah, 2007 was the last time we played any festival for that matter that I can think of. So it would be really nice for next summer to be able to come back and do a full festival run, and I think that might be possible. In the past, we've just had quite a few. I mean, if I were to sit there and list every single reason why we haven't been there, it would you would need to dedicate the entire magazine to me. But let's just know, just be assured, and be able to write it in one line that we really want to come.
Yeah, so maybe not stating all the reasons why you've not been playing festivals in years. Maybe you can just tell us some reasons why you haven't been
Well, yeah,
playing
sure. I
festivals.
mean, a lot of it comes down to we either had a prior engagement in a tour in the United States, or B, we weren't getting the type of offers that made it possible financially for us to come, or perhaps maybe we would only get an offer for one or two, three or four festivals, but it doesn't make sense to go out just for that. So there were just so many factors and technicalities, and then also the lineup having a big change, and having to kind of restructure the whole business and band. It's just a setback, if anything.
Okay. I was wondering, like, here in France, we don't have that much of a metal culture. Well, it's not it's not on a big scene, you know. It's kind of a bit underground. For example, you never hear metal music on radio, or barely, or you never see metal bands on TV, or barely. I was wondering what place has metal music in the United States.
Well, I think that it's definitely in line with France in that regard, where you don't hear it on the radio, and if you do, it's perhaps like a specialty or college, university type radio station, um, and it's definitely not on TV or in the mainstream. And there certainly, of course, was a period of time where it was late '80s, early '90s would be the era where you would hear Metallica Black Album,
Yeah.
and that was pretty taboo at the time. But that actually helped get bands like Pantera on the radio, and Korn later than that. But I think that era has kind of slowed down, and I don't really even hear bands like Korn or anything like that on the radio much anymore. So it's definitely more of a pop and or hip hop driven culture at this point. But I think that and another thing too that has taken away from a lot of the metal concerts would be the electronic music, and dubstep really took over for a little while here. And I just think that metal is one of those types of genres that it has been here for 40 years now, but it always has had its moments in time where it kind of fluctuates and goes up and down, and I think that that usually uh, indicates that something new is about to come and kind of rewrite the mold, if you will. Meaning, if you go back in time and metal wasn't cool for a minute when glam metal was popular, and then you know what I'm saying, and then like
Yeah.
all of a sudden that goes away, and then all of a sudden Pantera's a really big band, and then that goes away, and then Slipknot comes out of the woodwork, and it's a whole new thing, and makes metal cool again, and so I think that it just goes in cycles, and um, if you stick with it and stay dedicated to it, I think that there's always going to be an audience. Well, granted, it might not be as big as it was 10, 15 years ago. There's still an audience and an outlet to do it if you believe in it and are passionate about that kind of music.
Yeah. What do you think would be necessary to be to put metal music on the front of the show again?
Well, I think, have you ever seen this movie Airheads, where they go in and take over the radio station with Uzis,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
something like this might be in order.
And would you like it to be mainstream again? Well, if it has
uh,
ever been mainstream, like.
yeah, I don't know that it ever has been, but I think it'd be nice to have a little variety again and hear some heaviness on the radio. I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with going from like, say, for example, our radio station might play our rock station, if you will, play Disturbed or something, would probably be the heaviest band. But I don't think that the listener would be angry if Pantera came on after that. Maybe they'd get upset if Suffocation came on. I don't think that. I don't think that that could fly, but perhaps mainstream enough. Like, there are some bands that are still edgy and quote unquote metal, but are also constructing their music in a way that the average person can get behind it.
Yeah, okay, so that's funny. That's funny. I always pictured United States. Well, I lived there for a couple time there, and I always thought that music there was like more liberal than it is here in France, because we have quotas. Like, you have to have a certain amount of French music broadcasted on the radio. I thought you guys in the U.S. were more like opened, musically speaking.
Well, I think that there might be some truth to that, but I also think that the programmers are looking at advertisers and pocketbooks, and I don't think corporate sponsor necessarily wants to pay and hear Slayer on the radio, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yes, I
Um,
think that maybe that we might be, in a sense, but at the same time, it all comes down to dollars and cents and who's getting paid or not paid. We actually had a really big problem in America when the radio stations back in the 50s and 60s, when it was called payola, and the mafia would go in and pay our DJ $100,000 in cash just to start playing a radio song on the radio. I mean, it's pretty shady business, and I don't think that that's stopped in any way, shape, or form. I
yeah.
mean, it's changed in terms of how it's done, but I don't think that the premise has changed.
Okay. Well, I think we've covered pretty much everything I wanted to cover. So if you want to say anything else about the new record, about Chimera's future.
Well, yeah, just thanks to all the fans in France for listening. I hope that everyone enjoys the new album. It's, in my opinion, the hardest I've ever worked on a project, and I think that it shows. And hopefully, we get to go hang out in France soon. Always have a good time there.
Yeah, it will be very, very exciting to have you guys here. Where did you record the album?
We recorded it in Cleveland at Spider Studios, which is the same place we've recorded all our albums, basically, except for maybe one.
Okay. Okay. So, well, Mark, thank you very much for your time. It was really cool to speaking to you, and
Yeah.
well, meet you in France.
All right. Thank you for your time and nice talking with you as well. And have a good evening. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.